Hello, and welcome to the InPower Coffee Break. We have these every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And today I want to welcome our guest, Lynn Borton, a facilitator of conversation and transformation, and she bases her work on curiosity. And my name is Mary Brody, and I work with Dana Theus at InPower Coaching on marketing and user experience. InPower Coaching and InPower Women covers women's workplace issues, emotional intelligence, and work, corporate culture, and basically how to survive and thrive in the workplace. And before I introduce our guests and we begin the interview, I just want to invite you to the conversation. We'll do a quick 5-minute interview, and so you get to know Lynn, and then we'll open it up for discussion and hope you'll come online, either video or chat, to ask questions and offer your own opinions. And so you know, Dana usually is on the calls today, and unfortunately she couldn't join us. But we welcome everyone to participate in the discussion. So to give a little background on Lynn before we get started, Lynn is a facilitator of conversation and transformation with more than 2 decades of experience in governance and change management in the nonprofit sector. For nearly 25 years, she worked with NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization, capped by 12 years as Chief Operating Officer. In the summer of 2014, a confluence of events reminded her that life is short, and in 2015, she left NAMI to write and consult. Lynn is a producer and co-host of Choose to Be Curious, a newly launched bi-weekly radio show on WERLP 96.7 FM in Arlington, Virginia. Since her departure from NAMI, she has worked with established nonprofits and emerging startups, traveled in Southeast Asia, plunged into the frozen Atlantic Ocean, posed as a painter's model, sewn 2 quilts, taken 2 MOOCs, participated in a moth story slam, given a lead talk, begun a personal blog, which is actually very good. You should go check that out. I'll give you the URL in a minute. Trained in video production and enjoyed a lot more sleep. Lynn graduated from Yale with honors and a degree in religious studies, but learned her most important lessons working in a community mental health center following graduation. When pressed, Lynn describes herself as mostly grown up with gray hair and laugh lines to show for it, a hardworking, mission-driven former executive, unrepentant volunteer, and middling cook. And you could learn more about Lynn, what it means to choose to be curious, and leading through curiosity at her site, LynnBorton.com. So welcome, Lynn.
Thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful to be back.
Yes. I remember our last discussion left such a great impression because to be curious and to lead with curiosity, because I like to talk a lot also because I do the user experience side. So empathy, right? And curiosity I see really goes hand in hand with empathy. So it just was so exciting to talk to you last time and to talk about what it means to be curious. And I think today we're going to talk about how you get to lead with curiosity.
Right. We had such a great conversation last time, but we didn't actually get to sort of like how might you actually do some of these things that I was saying sounded like they would be so great to do. So I'm really happy to have the opportunity to kind of share some of that and get people's thoughts about it. You know, does it sound like it would work? Have they done something like this before? You know, what's their experience? I'm always curious about that.
Yes. And what is it, so we can just frame up in case people are new to the conversation. What does it mean to lead with curiosity?
Well, in my mind, it's really 2 things. One is just thinking of ourselves as leaders, being curious, so leading with curiosity. But maybe more importantly is actually for curiosity to be our first move, that's what we lead with. We don't lead with being the expert in the room. We don't lead with our power. We don't lead with knowledge. We lead with a really proud embrace of our ignorance and an invitation for other people to bring their information and expertise and experiences forward. So to me, it's kind of double-sided, and that's part of the fun of it.
What you're describing is so needed today.
I know. You know, I was doing another interview on this and kind of explaining some of my work with curiosity, and often I get these kind of quizzical looks. People are like, what do you mean? Like, choose to be curious. What is that? And I said, well, you know, I just really feel like there's an awful lot of stuck places in the world now where if we met those situations with curiosity instead of with anger or resistance or an assurance that we're right and they're wrong, we might not be quite so stuck. And we would certainly learn something in the process. So yes, I think it's very timely.
Yeah. So how do you do this? Like, how do you go about getting to this point?
Yeah. When we spoke last time, I shared what I call 3 Lynnisms, which, is a kind of inelegant way to describe things that I used to subject my colleagues to with regularity. They called them Lynnisms. So here she comes with another one of the things that we know she's going to say in these situations. And I always loved that because it meant that I was at least predictable in some ways, if not in all. But the people kind of knew that there were certain things that I was going to expect them to bring forward or to be thinking about as we were facing a variety of situations. And you mentioned I did nonprofit governance in an organization that has 1,000 volunteer-led affiliates. I mean, you just can't even imagine the permutations of things that happen in an organization like that, right?
Yeah.
So there were 3 things in particular that really seemed relevant to this conversation from that. One of them is, if you change your point of view, you will see something new. And this is something that my dad used to say when we were like Easter egg hunting or, trying to find something lost around the house. If you looked around kind of through different lenses, you were likely to find what it was that you were looking for. But I've carried it, kind of a step further to, if you get out of the role that you're accustomed to, or you get out of the position that you are in, and think about how the world looks from another role or another position, you see things you wouldn't otherwise see. So that's one, just sort of really being very intentional and purposeful about kind of looking at things from a different perspective. Another one was just assume you don't know what you don't know. Because we all like to think that we know everything we need to know to do our job, and people just need to get out of the way. The reality is there's a lot that we don't know, even when we're experts in our fields. So where do you get that information? And how powerful it is to start with this assumption that you don't actually know, instead of starting with the assumption that I got this, I know. And if I don't know, it's not worth knowing.
That's the scary part. Yeah.
That's the scary part. And it's dangerous, right? That's really dangerous.
Yes. I've seen projects fail from that perspective because someone says it's not worth knowing. And it's like, I know this is a detail, but
right.
It's kind of critical.
You don't care doesn't mean it's not important.
Right.
And then, particularly since a lot of what I did was governance and dealt with a lot of dispute resolution, and really trying to figure out what was going on in the differences of opinions and perspective. One that comes from, I think actually it goes all the way back to St. Francis, of seek first to understand and then to be understood. And that's actually a really hard discipline to impose on oneself, because we all instantly go to a place of, kind of self-defense and justification. And sometimes we need to just close that down and be curious about what's going on for you here. And have I, in ways I didn't know and perhaps really didn't intend, offended or violated or in some way broken a trust with you? So those were those kind of 3 Lynnisms. And, when I think about ways to make those real, the first thing I think about is a curiosity walk. And that's a sort of a made-up term for me, of just literally kind of walking around a place, literally walking around it, or just figuratively walking around it and kind of asking lots of questions as you go. I think maybe the the best example analogy that people might have is we're all familiar with the experience of needing to kid-proof our house, either for our own children or for somebody else's kids when they're coming. And you walk around your surroundings differently, like, oh, that's a kid hazard. Oh, I shouldn't leave that there. Things that to us are invisible in the course of our days suddenly look different when we think about, oh, do I really want a kid in this stuff? So, not that I'm encouraging people to think of their colleagues as toddlers by any stretch of the imagination, but again, to literally walk around the workplace with your colleagues' perspectives in mind. Wow, these cubicles are really noisy. I had no idea the coffee machine was that loud. Or, God, I can't stand the smells coming out of the kitchen. Who could work near this? You know, there are things that if you are intentional about looking for them, about sort of asking, what am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I smelling? What am I feeling? That will give you insights into other people's experiences. So you can do it in that very literal way. And I actually encourage people to do that in a really literal way. You see, something you start to notice, this is so interesting. Look at all the family pictures, here. Or, wow, I had no idea. Here's like a plaque for, community service and something completely unrelated to what we do. That's cool. Tell me more about that. So it's a wonderful way to see so much more than you see when you're on this beeline, from your desk to your car to a conference room or, whatever, to sort of slow down and just kind of take a walk around. I do this, out and about. I'll pick a color, for instance. Okay, today is red. I'm just going to walk around and where are all the places that I see red, in my daily walk, in my commute. I never noticed all those fire plugs are red on the sides of buildings. Wow, there are a lot of people wearing red this time of year. Or wow, nobody's wearing red this time of year. It's just a way to, kind of slow down and notice what's going on and then begin to ask.
There was a colleague of mine in a design firm, and she was stuck working on this project. Mm-hmm. And at the time, it was kind of ridiculous, but it's kind of what you did. It's an extreme version, right? She went into the corner and stood on her head.
Changed your point of view.
She goes, I need to change my perspective, right? Yeah. And I got, it was funny because it's like, really? But it did help her see things very differently.
Yeah. And you don't have to go to that extreme, but it may be helpful to go to that extreme. I mean, I would occasionally, when I was really frustrated on a phone call, I did a lot of phone calls standing up because otherwise I would have sat for 10 hours straight in some of my days. So I would stand up. And I would literally take the phone with me across the room, I'd turn and try to, I had not a lot of windows, but I'd look out the window, just something again to kind of change that perspective. Because do you know the old saying, where you stand depends on where you sit?
No, I have never heard that.
Well, it's, it's sort of intuitive, right? Like where you stand on something really depends on kind of where you sit in relationship with it. And so I thought about that at some point and decided I need to make that very explicit and think about that very explicit way. And that was sort of the genesis of some of those routines, some of those rituals, strategies, whatever you want to call them.
Well, from what you're describing, it's going to be more aware. Find a way to be more aware of what's happening. Think about what's happening around you. What may people be thinking? What they might be feeling? Like you said, take a walk around the office. What is this place? You see it every day, but you zone out. You just go I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to go get my water. I'm going to go do this. And
yeah, I think we're there every day. We don't necessarily see it every day. And so it's an opportunity to see things that may be right in front of our faces. You know, I had a stretch of time at NAMI where there was some pretty intense kind of senior level things going on. And at some point I realized that the young woman who sat right outside my desk was sort of feeling all that energy, didn't know what was going on, but it clearly, like, people were going in and out of my office not looking happy. And at some point I thought, that's just a horrible position for her to be in. And I, you know, I sought her out and I said, you know, how you doing? And how does this feel? And would you like to just either work from home or move to another part of the office for the next day or two? Because I can tell you it's not going to get better for another, you know, couple of days. And, you know, it's very easy to just see only what I was experiencing on my side of the door, not what other people were experiencing.
Well, what you're bringing up, I see too often in work environments where there is something going on. There's something brewing. Right. And sometimes the execs try to hide it because they don't want to expose it. Because like you said, it's very senior things. In some ways, do you really want to get everybody all riled up? Do you get them, you know, in a froth for nothing, right? Or in a froth about something they can't fix, right? And they'll think, oh, well, no one knows, right? The team doesn't know. And the team,
they totally know.
They all sense it. They all know. They know something's not right. And that's where the rumors start because they make it up. Like, well, I saw so-and-so leave so-and-so's office.
Yes, no, they totally do that. And I used to say that in the absence of information, you get speculation.
You do.
You know, and it's often wrong, and not for bad reasons, but just because people absolutely know when something is going on. They can feel it. And so as a leader, you know, in this curiosity context, kind of being curious about how is this feeling? What's the energy that this is putting out there? And if you've done your curiosity walks, if you kind of know sort of who's in the flight patterns, or who's likely to be particularly sensitive or resonant to those things, or particularly anxious about it, then you can do something about that. You may not be able to fix it because it may just be a tough time, and that's, you know, there's no way around it other than through it. But having been curious and having been more attentive to those different perspectives, you're better equipped to help people through what could be really challenging times. So, I mean, another one of the strategies that I think of in this context is something I call a curiosity conversation, because Brian Grazer used that term, and I think it's such a good one. He's a movie producer. He did Apollo 13 and A Beautiful Mind, all these big blockbusters, right? And in Hollywood, he's mostly known because he has this totally crazy hair, like sticks out in all directions. That's his thing. But he's also known for having these curiosity conversations. And for 35 years, he's been chasing down people like political prisoners and astrophysicists and police chiefs. And the only criteria is they can't be in the movie business.
Okay.
And he wants to talk to them about their work and their lives. Not because he wants to make a movie. I think some people think that's what he's up to, but that's not what it is. He just wants to understand kind of life through their lenses. And what he says is that stuff then becomes fodder for insights or references, or, you know, maybe it finds its way into an element of a character in a movie about something completely different. Or maybe it just gives him a broader and more nuanced view of the world. But whichever of those, what I love about that is this priority he places on hearing people's stories, you know, understanding their experiences and perspectives for the sake of their stories and experiences and perspectives, nothing else. And that is a really generous, exciting thing to do. And you can do that anywhere, right? You don't have to be Brian Grazer, you know, tracking down rock stars and rocket scientists. You can do that anywhere. Family, friends, neighbors, colleagues. And people love that. They love to be asked about themselves. Very validating. And, a leader is somebody with willing followers. People follow people they believe in, and they believe in people they know and feel they understand a little bit. And those curiosity conversations help with that a lot.
Yeah, because you're right about the listening. I think it's such a skill that has been kind of lost today.
Right. So what's an example? What's an example where you really felt heard? You really felt like somebody was listening to you. It shouldn't be that hard, right?
I know. I would say to some of my friends, I do feel heard because we do take the time to listen and take turns of you have your part, I have my part, and we make sure that the other person's hearing it. Like if it's not sound, try to repeat back. So you're thinking this, and then sometimes they're like, no, you got it all wrong. Right. Or it might be pointing out to them, this is what you're saying, what you're thinking. Now that's a different issue. Right. It's, I know I try to listen and be sure I understand the other person. That's something I try to do often in calls and things. Because mostly I'm on the phone. And I think that's a challenge.
That's its own kind of challenge.
Yeah. Because people think you can multitask. I think it's funny because every 6 months or so, 3 to 6 months, Fast Company, Harvard Business Review, one of those guys, right, puts out an article how nobody can multitask, and yet everyone tries to do it. Well, it's very funny.
Of course, we get double messages about that, right? That we talk about multitasking as this, oh, he's such a multitasker. That's so great. He gets so many things done. How does she do it all? And we get told, no, it doesn't actually work. So we're optimists, right? We keep trying because we think it'll actually work. But it's hard. It's hard to give your undivided attention when your attention is divided.
It is. I know I can't do the email and phone. I've tried and I'm miserable at it. And so I give up. And now if I'm on the phone, I have to send an email in the middle of a call because that's the action. We need to do it right now. Sometimes people will keep talking and I'm like, hold on. I don't multitask. I either listen to you or I'm typing an email. I'm sorry. You might think I'm slow, but this is the way I have to work. I'm going to just not do anything right.
More efficient. In the end, it's probably more efficient. I mean, another one of the strategies, sort of in the conversation end, is what I think of as an incredible invitation, actually, to simply say, "Tell me more."
Yeah,
right? That's what friends do, right? Yeah. And it's exactly what you're saying. That, tell me more about that, or, oh.
Right.
Right. And you give space. We give space to things.
Yes. Yeah. There's sometimes people will say things, and you're right. It sometimes is an invitation. I want to get to talk about something, but I'm not quite sure how to bring it up.
Right.
And I don't. Yeah. And you have to listen for the cue of this is, and I think it's difficult. Again, in a culture that's, the good and bad of social media, right? Me, hear me, right? And there's so much noise and you can't listen to all of it. But how do you still maintain the humanity with people to do what you're saying, to do tell me more, explore more, and understand someone else's story and their perspective.
Right. Well, and I think you make it actually a really interesting point there about, one of the things that people complain about curiosity is that it's kind of inconvenient. It takes a lot of time. And you can kind of go down the rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
Where do you ask them, tell me more? Or when does somebody's story just become kind of somebody's unfiltered, dump.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's a fair beef. That's a fair consideration. And I think, you have to right size it. There's some other questions you can ask, like how might I, which is another one that I love. And I don't know who gets credit for first kind of coining that construct. But if I deconstruct that construct, what I love about it is that it doesn't paint anybody into a corner. It's just about possibility. It's not about this is what I will do or how will I do this. It's like, how might I do this? So it opens possibilities. It goes to a how that can be larger than just a simple implementation, like a task thing. But how might I contribute to a constructive dialogue about race in this country? That's not a little task that you're talking about there. That's really a deep question of what's involved here and what can I contribute? What do I need to know about it? Who's involved? Those sorts of things. And the people that I have known who have used how might I X as questions in their lives and in their work are, one, some of the most curious people I know, but two, also some of the most effective, because they've really thought about what it is that they want to accomplish with their question. They're not just asking questions to be asking questions. They're asking questions to move the ball.
Sometimes I think when you're talking about implementation, people jump a little too quick because, sometimes I think people don't realize if you're being curious and exploring more options, you might find a better solution.
Right.
And that better solution might take 2 or 3 more conversations, but you might have saved yourself in the end 3 weeks of work for those 3 extra days of conversation rather than running off the cliff and like doing something that could potentially just be a disaster.
Yeah. And sort of, how do you do that? I mean, how do you dig into that a little bit to sort of figure out, have I actually got enough information to move forward effectively? I think of, sort of your kind of going off the cliff or kind of following the wrong direction reminds me of another strategy called the 5 whys, where like, okay, well, we want to do this because it's important. So why is it important?
Right.
And then whatever that answer is, well, why? And why? And, I have done that to myself, and I have found it takes me in completely unexpected directions.
Right.
When I'm really honest with myself about why is that so important? Why do we want to do that? I use this in strategic planning, for instance. Like, okay, why do you want to make the world better for people living with mental illness? Why is that the right direction to do it? Why is that important? And it really helps clarify, and doesn't always, but it can also really help in terms of kind of making sure that you launch yourself in the right direction. So you're not looking back 6 months later and go, well, how do we get here?
Right. Because a lot of times the why is, the reason's like crazy. Like, why? Because we just need to get this done.
All right.
And why is like for some unrelated goal for some other group. Why, because it has nothing to do with what we're doing.
The flip side of that, though, and I give credit to this to the Coro Foundation, and I learned about it through Beth Flores, who's somebody I interviewed for my show, Choose to Be Curious, where she said, another strategy is 4 W's and an H. So it's what, when, who, how, but not why, where, but not why. And I'm like, well, what about why? What happened to why? And she said, you know, it was so interesting. She said, well, why can make people defensive?
Really?
Think about it. It's like, well, why do you do
Really?
that? You know, it's sort of weaponized. And so if you stay away from the why for a little bit and just sort of understand better, well, how and who and what, where and when, they're interesting kind of complementary strategies, I think. And I had not heard that until a couple of weeks ago when my conversation with Beth.
That's interesting, because now I'm like even thinking like with the why, like the first year, like why is it attacking? I was ready to say, why do you say that? And I was even hearing in my head like, that is so mean. Like I'm like thinking like I try to communicate with some level of empathy, like how is the other person going to feel? And I was like, oh my God, like what a terrible question. And I'm like, and that's a why question. Like you said, why?
Right.
Exactly what you said. Why did you do that? Why would you do that? And it comes out to, you're right, it's too easy. But if you said, how did you get to that solution?
Right.
It's a nice, softer, less judgmental, or it might be judgmental in your head, but that you're giving them the opportunity.
It leaves the door open. And I think in leaving the door open for your correspondent, your companion, your colleague, your adversary, you leave the door open for yourself as well. That's so that you then don't get into this like hardened position of, well, I'll tell you why.
True. Oh my goodness. I'm just like even hearing like how did you come to that? Yeah, you might feel, I'm thinking about situations where I've even used that. And at first I'm like I'm a little confused, but you're right. The door is open. Like I'm entertaining the thought of why someone might do something different. Like how did you get there?
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, I think it is important because it's all well and good to say you want to lead with curiosity and you want to cultivate a culture of curiosity. You know, Nabokov called curiosity the highest form of insubordination. And it can be, right? I mean, you know, there are a lot of bosses and leaders, they don't welcome questions because it feels insubordinate. It feels disruptive, and it is. And so, you know, as a leader, leading with curiosity, kind of cultivating or creating a culture of curiosity, you need to make curiosity safe. And you need to help people find ways to ask those questions in ways that don't feel defensive or aggressive. You know, there's a big difference between saying, tell me more, and tell me more. You know, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? You know, the tone.
Yeah, tone matters.
Well, and you know, you do this, right? You work remotely. So a lot of your interactions are potentially through email. You know, why did you do that in email? I don't know how to read that. I don't know what the intention is behind that. So curiosity in email is actually, you know, it requires a level of attention so that the intent, the kind of open door, the welcoming, is received on the other end. I had this happen to me years ago. A former boss sent me an email about something, and he was mad at me. That was clear from the first part of the email. And then at the end, he asked, the words were, what were you thinking? Well, I read that as like what were you thinking?
Right.
And I don't actually know what he meant, but it could have been like, well, what were you thinking? You know, it could have actually been a genuine invitation to kind of share my perspective. I will never know because I instantly went to, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. You know, you have to be careful of those things. He may have been being curious after he let me know he was really mad, but maybe not. And I don't know. So that was a good lesson for me to realize how easy it was to have even the best of intentions kind of go awry potentially when you're asking people questions.
That's true. And you're right, especially with the email, because you don't know, you don't get the interaction. It's not easy you don't get the people read. I've had miscommunications like you wouldn't believe with email. I know I try to double check, but even then there's been back and forth. Like you can see it just, someone says something, they didn't mean it that way. Then you can start an email war or pick up the phone, which I think is the optimal way to handle it.
Yeah, we're just sort of back and go, wait, let me ask, what am I missing? I'm going to assume I don't know what I don't know here. Where did this go off the track? Kind of greet it with curiosity. It's never too late to be curious. I guess that's my message there. So if you miss the boat and you don't do it the first time around, you can come back the second or fifth or 54th time and say, wait, tell me more. So anyway.
I know, I was going to say with that, I think we are at time.
Oh.
Yeah, but this was delightful. It's delightful as always when you come by, and we'll be great to have you back again. For an additional conversation. So thanks so much, and I'll just put your. Let me get your blog URL. Here we go. I can't do the multitask, but hold on. Let me put this into the conversation there. And so this is Lynn's site.
And that's actually one of the things I post there pretty regularly is each of the shows from the radio show. So,
wonderful.
Yeah. So, you can get them at Mixcloud, mixcloud.com/Lynn Borton, or at wera.fm. They do live streaming plus on demand post broadcast. But I also post the link to each of the interviews on the website and blog.
Great.
So if people are curious, they can come hear more.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lynn. Again, awesome as always.
Yep.
And just to close out, thank you for coming by the InPower Coffee Break. Again, every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Stay cool.
All right. Thanks. Bye.